Prime Minister Renzi, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, well, it's really important and really interesting because Italy is playing a very interesting role. The current Prime Minister thinking that she can be a bridge builder between President Trump and the rest of Europe. How is that going, do you think?
I think with Trump it's not easy to predict and to be a bridge. But I think Giorgia Meloni have a very good stability in the government that is good for Italy and not usual. But at the same time, I think the real bridge will be Germany, not Italy. With the new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz,
Because Trump likes her. He calls her a game changer or something. He calls her a lot of compliments.
Do you know, Trump is very, not diplomatic as in the past for everyone. Oh, she's fantastic, she's good, she's great, great job. I hope, of course, everyone could help to create a solid bridge between Europe and USA are most welcome. But I think the real leadership in Europe will be again France and Germany, Macron and Merz.
Interesting. Of course, Merz is centre-right.
Yes, is not ideological, Trump.
Yeah.
But, Trump did agreement with North Korea, with Hamas, with the Houthi. Is out of the box. When I was Prime Minister 10 years ago, probably nobody could imagine a White House able to speak with everyone. Trump is that.
And that's a good thing.
Depends.
I mean, today he's met for the first time, I think, in 20 years that an American president has met with the new president, they call him the interim, whatever he is, Ahmad al-Sharaa of Syria, and agreed to lift the sanctions, saying, good luck, Syria, you know, make yourself great. Our first time in 20 years.
I don't think that is very acceptable and normal for a former politician as myself, because I'm used to imagine diplomacy very different way. But this is Trump. You can love, you can hate. I prefer Trump when he sign agreement and cooperation to the Trump when he sign executive order for tariffs, because there is not a most stupid thing than the trade war which Trump launched. Now probably he changed the idea. Probably the guys inside him in the White House explained to him, Mr. President, don't exaggerate, because 1 month ago America risked a lot. But I think we are in a new world, multipolar world.
So let's ask them, because there seems to be a lot of anxiety, especially between Europe and the United States, erstwhile close allies for the last 80 years. You Europeans are saying, oh, look, he did a deal with China. Oh, look, he did a deal with Britain, which is, you know, Brexit Britain.
No.
But we still have nothing and no deal. Are you concerned that this is becoming an unbreakable bridge, or it's irrevocable? You can't really get across this divide at the moment.
I'm worried, of course, but I think the good solution is in our hands, because it's impossible to don't imagine USA and Europe together. I believe in that alliance, and we remain.
So you're saying it's impossible not to imagine them together?
Yes, because we stay together. We are together. We will continue together. So, what is the problem? Two. The first, Trump have to accept the idea Europe is not a problem for the United States. Europe is the best ally for the United States. And also, if we have some discussions about defense, about trade, we have to fix an agreement. At the same time, this is my opinion, as very proud believer in the United States of Europe dream, I think Europe have to wake up.
Okay, so he says the United States of Europe dream was designed to screw, this is his word, America. So Trump believes that however it's designed Europe, it's not a friend of America's.
That is a mistake. That is an absolutely unacceptable idea. But America is bigger than the single president. And so now there is Trump for the next 4 years. We have to work with him. At the same time, Europe have to think about the overregulation in bureaucracy. Europe have to think about some ideological approach. Thinking about Green Deal was exaggerated, the approach of Green Deal, because the idea to save climate change is correct. Destroy European manufacturing was a mistake, particularly for Germany and Italy. So I think we have everyone try to go in the right direction. Trump have to come back to the crazy trade war against Europe. At the same time, Europe have to wake up and try to imagine it to be a lab and not a museum. We have to be a lab, not
a lab and not a museum. Let me ask you about the lab of paying for your own security and your own defense. Clearly, many people believe that the time has come. Many also believe that you can't suddenly do it overnight while there is a hot war raging on your continent. What do you think? Can Europe make up the deficit in weapons and assistance that America is cutting off from Ukraine? And do you think your country still stays with defending Ukraine?
Two things. First, we were in 1992 as Europeans at 2.6% of GDP of investment in military issues. Now we arrive to, in 2014, 1.1 of GDP.
What happened?
Happened after communism failure, everyone think, okay, this is the end of history. You remember Fukuyama?
Yes, I do.
That is an interesting thing. But in 2014, we signed, I was there, in Wales, in summit, led by David Cameron and Barack Obama, we signed a commitment. We will come back to 2%. So we have to come back to this part of business. The problem is what type of investment we want to do. America invest in defense and create a dual-use internet, healthcare investment linked to defense, use for civil.
Defense, yeah, yes. Everything had dual use.
Europe invested too much in bureaucracy, also in defense and military issues. So we have to change the type of investment. And the second point, we have to continue to work with Ukraine. That is a mistake of the Italian Prime Minister. Because
which is the mistake? Because she's been defending Ukraine. What's the mistake?
But the mistake was when she decided to don't stay with Merz, with Macron, and with Donald Tusk and Keir Starmer in the train for Kiev. Look,
she should have been on that train.
Yes, because in 2022, the same train was a train with Macron, the former Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and the former Prime Minister, the good Mario Draghi. Now, unfortunately, Poland brings our place. And I'm very proud to be Italian. I think Italy have to be with the other European guys. But I hope that was a mistake. Of course, that was a mistake of Giorgia Meloni. I think we have to continue to create the conditions for a very long and right peace.
You have also said that this moment calls for a special envoy in Europe to deal with the Trump administration. We know that the Chinese have appointed a special envoy to deal with the trade issue. You've mentioned Mario Draghi. Do you think that's even a possibility? Should it be Meloni?
I'm very frank with you. I think we cannot accept the idea today in Europe we have a problem. The problem is the lack of politics and too much bureaucracy in Europe. Too much commissioners, too much people who continue to, I'm Europe. Europe is a disaster to understand in terms of organization.
What Europeans are saying is that the problem is they've got a lack of trust now. The whole sort of family with the US has been broken.
That is good. That is true. That is true. But if we have an internal organization without a clear responsibility, that is a problem. So my idea to create a special envoy to dialogue with Trump, and the name of Mario Draghi is the best name in Europe.
He was the former prime minister, former central banker,
former banker, former European.
Yeah.
He worked for everyone.
He knows everything about trade.
He wrote a very good report about the problem and the opportunities of Europe. Yeah. At the same time, I proposed 3 years ago to create a special envoy for the war, for the dialogue between Russia and Ukraine. And I proposed the name of Tony Blair. We have to bring the best guys, not
women.
Of course, sorry. Absolutely correct. And I was the only one prime minister in the history of Italy with the 50% of women in my cabinet. So only one, 69 government, and only my government with the half 50-50. But independently from that, I believe we have to create a Europe more efficient. So special envoys goes in this direction.
Okay, so in February, all this nice stuff you say about they have to stay together and this may be temporary. J.D. Vance, I was there at the Munich Security Conference, the Vice President of the United States, smacked Europe around and essentially put his faith and America's weight behind the far right in Germany, the AfD. And the far right in many parts of Europe are gaining a lot of ground and they're winning, you know, very, very important elections and positions of power. What do you make of the Vice President of the United States who comes to Europe and says to people like you, you're the problem?
I think this is absolutely crazy and unacceptable. But after this statement of J.D. Vance and all the statement of President Trump, left come back to win, thanks to the great support of far right from White House. Nobody believed possible in February. In Canada, left win.
Liberal Party.
And Liberal Party, who is Mark Carney, is not the traditional left. Is very. Yeah. I love Mark Carney because he's the model I have for my country. But in Canada, nobody expected the victory of Mark Carney. Mark Carney won. Also thanks to the polemics from Trump-Vance. The same in Australia, because Anthony Albanese won election and the polls in February was terrible. So if J.D. Vance will speak in the future against Europe again, I think is a good news for European.
But you also said he shouldn't be coming to Italy again without first apologizing for calling you all parasites and
I think it's
pathetic freeloaders.
When you think Europe is a problem, but when he decided to spend time for his holiday, he stayed with us in Roma. So Roma
and the last official visitor to the Pope Francis. I want to ask you a final question. You were maybe the only world leader, former leader, who called on President Biden to leave the race last summer, to leave the race. Why did you do that?
I love Joe. I love when he was vice president, I worked with him and I worked with President Obama very strongly. We had a very great cooperation and I love his humanity and his friendship. At the same time, I think 2 years ago was clear. Democrats needed a different candidate. And probably if Democrats decided to organize primaries in the right time, probably today, it was not Trump.
Prime Minister Renzi, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.